Hello, Will Perry here. I hope you are well. This video is about narcissism and how low self-esteem is a learned response, and low self-esteem attracts narcissism if you've seen any of my other videos. So that's what this is about, and this comes from a request from Oriane M. Thank you for the comment. Having watched Narcissistic Parents, I mentioned about self-esteem being a learned response, and she said, or they said, could you make a video on the learned response you mentioned about? So thank you very much for your comment. I will do just that. So first off, what is self-esteem? So I've put up here, it's a subjective evaluation of your own worth and value, where you fit in the world, what you give the world, your worth and value within the world. But your beliefs about your own capabilities and qualities and attributes. So basically it's what you think about yourself, not what others think about you, but what you think about yourself. So let's look at healthy self-esteem. Might be have positive beliefs about oneself, about your abilities, view themselves in a positive light. Generally, we have all have adversity and things to overcome, but generally there'll be a core of viewing themselves positively, being confident and capable, healthy relationships, attracting healthy relationships, maintaining healthy relationships. Not that they don't break up, but that they have healthy relationships and able to handle criticisms and setbacks, which we all have. It's a part of life, is it not? So in contrast, what's low self-esteem? Well, it's negative beliefs about oneself, and a sense of inadequacy, that you're not worthy or that you're unlovable for some reason, in some way, that you maybe suffer from anxiety or increased anxiety, shame, or self-doubt, that you have a fear of failure more than other people. Like I say, this sense of adversity we all have to overcome, but you have this fear of failure, or perhaps an unhealthy coping mechanism. So that's maybe, it can be addiction, but abuse, self-harm, it can be all sorts of things as a way to cope for kind of all the above, really. And you develop a negative coping mechanism, often without realizing it. And that might sound strange. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Or with self-esteem, you could develop narcissistic traits. This just briefly, I do other videos on this, but inflated sense of self-importance. You can have a lack of empathy, a need for admiration from others, and it can be a coping mechanism to early trauma. Again, that's quite well documented, and has to be said. Early trauma, neglect, or abuse does not mean that you will develop narcissistic traits. Have to be clear on that. And there are many factors involved. I'm going to cover some of them in this. So, important notice, self-esteem is not the same as confidence, okay? For me, this is an internal versus external thing. So, I've said self-esteem is really how you view yourself. Confidence is your ability to do something, perform a task. Perhaps your ability to speak on stage. That's one of the biggest or top fears for us humans. But once you can do it, once you train yourself to do it, you can be confident to speak on stage. And I know I've done it. Confident to do that, yet you can come off and, oh my God, did I do it right? I fluffed that up, didn't I? Oh my God, how needing the validation of others. So it's very different things. So you can be confident to do something, a job, a task, yet you can have low self-esteem still. So the two are very different. So I wanted to make that clear. Also, warning. Self-esteem is crucial to your emotional well-being. So low self-esteem, if you have low self-esteem, you develop negative beliefs about yourselves. You could suffer more from or more prone to anxiety and depression, and you could have this sense of being unfulfilled. And that's not exclusive to low self-esteem, but it's going to be more prevalent with that. So the whole thing about this, is it a learned response? Well, let's go into that then. So are we a blank canvas? When we're born into this world, are we just a blank canvas? There's different things that we learn, and if we're in the environment, a family environment, or whatever environment we're brought up in, particularly if we say it's in controlled environment, we're influenced by that. We learn how to behave within that environment, and it becomes normal to us. So if there's alcoholism, substance abuse, if there's a controlling environment, if there's shouting, if there's stuff I'll talk about in a little bit more detail in a second, we learn how to cope around that, and we can learn in different ways, and that becomes normal behavior to us. Normal means it's actually difficult to notice, and we pick these up in our senses, in our beliefs, and physically it affects the development of our brain. So I want to cover those three things now. First of all, the senses. I love the story about, this is clearly farmer here, and the one over there is the city folk and farmer. So I like this story because it's really simple to understand. So the farmer, the senses, the olfactory senses, literally the senses in your nose that detect smell, ping, 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 far off. But when they fire off every day, there's no difference. So what happens is the wire to your brain. The brain says, right, nothing's changed here, so there's no difference. So I'm going to mute out that signal that keeps firing off to say there's quite a strong smell here. Whoo! Yeah, and the farmer can wake up and that'd be proper fresh air there. And now I'm Cornish, so I'm doing a play on the farmers having yokel accents, which I like in here in the UK. So the farmer wakes up. Proper smell here, fresh air. But the city folk come in, good God, it stinks around here. How do you bear it? Anyway, so that thing. Their olfactory senses are ping, ping, ping because they're used to the city. They're not used to this farmer fresh air. And if you've ever been to a farm, it can hit you like, how do you hold your nose? It's that bad. So how can this be? Because the sense is no longer triggered because there's no difference. It's the same. It's normal. So the farmer is hardwired not to be able to smell this stuff. It's fresh air to them. Yet the city folk come in. They're not hardwired in this way. They can really tell the difference from the city to this. But if they go back to the city, it smells fresh to them. Reverse it. Farmer goes. Or this big city, it stinks. He can't, the air is polluted. Blow his. If you've ever done that, blow your nose, and it's like, oh my God, I can see the pollution. It's like, how do people live in this? So whichever way around, you're hardwired to your normal surroundings, absolutely normal. So this is where our senses go. Okay, so that's just the example. And if you think back to, what's a learned response? Well, your senses are registering what's normal, everyday senses as normal. What about your beliefs then? It's in exactly the same way. We're hardwired to our beliefs, and these might be our values, the values of the people and the environment around us. What's good, what's bad, the beliefs of other people around us, who we're hugely influenced by. What we're shown, what we see versus what we're told. Don't do as I say, do as I, or whatever it is. It's like we actually learn from what we see, not what we're told. That, low self-esteem, we learn it from people around us. Who's the person with low self-esteem in your environment? Where did you get it if you got it? Which parent was it, or which carer was it? An example around money, so what's your attitude to money? That will be, instilled from your upbringing. If it's a negative one, you'll have this negative belief. But what happens to these things when they're hardwired? They're no longer visible to us. They're invisible and becomes normal. It's almost like it's invisible. It's really difficult to see this stuff until we maybe go to a different environment, like the farmer going to the city, or the city person coming to, then you notice it. Then you ding, ding, ding. There's something different, and your beliefs are triggered, like your senses are triggered. So if you've had to walk, if you're brought up in an environment where you have to walk on eggshells, that builds your belief that perhaps you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you mustn't disturb or wake the monster. You have to tread carefully. These build up negative beliefs, but again, the negative beliefs are invisible. They're just normal to you. You don't notice them. You're guided in life by them, but you don't even notice them. It's a weird thing, but it's hardwired in your brain. Another thing hardwired in our brains is, particularly in the formative years, science can now prove and show how this system works. The formative years between 1 and 5, 1 and 7 particularly, or 1 and 5 particularly, 1 and 7 often, the environment influences our development of the brain, the physical development of our brain. So, the last one was beliefs, this one's brains, same picture. So science can show how our brains actually develop. They can do all the scans, and they can show how this hardwiring is actually working. So in those formative years, particularly, the brain is developing and growing and building all its neural pathways as we fill it with beliefs and values and understanding and knowledge and all this stuff. science can actually show how the brain works, how it learns this stuff, how it builds neural pathways, which become automatic, hardwired triggers, you know? So environment has a huge impact on that. And it can affect the development, and does affect the development of our brain. So if we have stress present in our environment, that affects the development of our brains and the stress receptors, either making them more developed or less developed. So it impacts the way, or for example, stress or abuse or neglect, that impacts the needs within our brain, whether we need more or less of something, whether we're more susceptible to it or less susceptible to it. But it creates a need. So whatever that environment is, it can create an effect, create a change in the brain, and affect the development of the brain, and create a need. So if you're stressed, or if you have a need for attachment because you were neglected, you need for attachment, you're a need for attachment. If you've got stress, maybe you're susceptible to it and you need more reassurance. Maybe you're less susceptible to it, so you're not bothered by stressful situations. The brain is affected by environment, and science can show that. Yet it's all invisible and normal to us. So it's like we're not aware of this stuff. I find fascinating. And take this a step further. Science has proven how, here's Mrs. Farmer, how the unborn child's development, the brain develops, of course, in pregnancy, throughout pregnancy. How the brain is affected by the hormones present in the mother, in the womb. So stress hormone, for example, affects, and it's been again proven through science, to affect the development of the brain and the stress receptors. So it influences us before we're even born, influences the development of the brain and how we later on in life react to stress. Now, it's fascinating. And again, so that's the hardwired stuff. It's invisible to us and it's perfectly normal. It's really difficult to see. How can you know you have this? You just live your life. Yet you're guided without realizing it by all these different factors, And the last bit I want to introduce to all these factors that influence what we learn in our life and when we learn it is the personality traits. So we all have personality traits. It's called the Big Five. That's the one I use. It's about our individual talents and our biological temperaments. So we all have this, and if you could take the test, you see where you are on the scale of all these 5 different things. So extroversion. And I'm not going to go into this. This could be a whole nother video, but extroversion, and that goes between being energetic and reserved. Agreeableness goes between compassionate and detached. Neuroticism goes between confident and nervous. Conscientiousness goes between efficient and easygoing. Openness, lastly, goes between inventive and consistent. So the 5 scales, we get a different score between, and we test in adults to see how that has developed. So we can track that back then to what our interests were as children, but also where we're going to likely fit best in terms of jobs, in terms of temperament, in terms of relationship. It gives us tons of information. It's very reliable across cultures, across genders, across, it's a very reliable test. So this has an impact as well. So this whole nature nurture thing, it's like, well, okay, we've got factors that affect us very much, and we've got sort of a natural preference, but then the natural preference can be affected by our environment, so and vice versa. So these are all the factors. So where does that leave you watching this video? It's like, wow, there's so many factors involved. So in terms of the assumptions I'm going to make in this, I'm going to make the assumption that you're not the narcissist. Okay, watching this, because a narcissist wouldn't be bothered about what I think anyway, or they wouldn't get this far probably. You're watching this because the assumption I'm making is because you're either impartial to this and it's interesting information, or that you think you might have low self-esteem, or that you have low self-esteem. So particularly these 2 aspects, the agreeableness and neuroticism, that you might be higher in. So you might be highly agreeable, very conscientious person, and you might be maybe prone to more neuroticism, so negative thoughts about yourself, more of a nervous temperament. So these 2 tend to go hand in hand with low self-esteem, with attracting narcissists, because you're easily you want to please people. You're a people pleaser, and perhaps more easily influenced. and more worried about what other people think, and maybe more of a nervous disposition. So that's the assumption that I'm making, and those are the people I help. Sorry, the tick is by the woman, because that's the person that I help with the work I do. So, in conclusion, this is a learned response. This is the book of life. We have all this information, all this data going in, and low self-esteem is a learned response, but it's a very complex thing, as you can imagine, as I hope I've covered and illustrated. It's very complex. It has a significantly negative impact on our lives. Yeah, it's invisible. We don't realize it. We have no awareness of that unless we go through something that brings it up, unless we get asked the questions, unless we do a lot of analysing with it. And it's really difficult to analyse yourself sometimes. So that's why a video like this, I hope, will be useful, because it's completely invisible to us. And I hope I've illustrated that. So we learn this stuff. It's a learned response. So I hope that goes back to answering the question that I got about, can you explain this learned response a little bit? So where does that leave you? If you want to find out more, find out your self-esteem score, because self-esteem, I think, is a really nice way to start exploring whether this is for you and what you've learned in your from your book of life. And maybe the things you've learned, if I go back, some of the things we've learned are false. And it's like, that can be a difficult thing to learn, because you have to, if you're going to progress around that thought and explore that, then you have to realize that you're going to have to unlearn some things that you've learned. And in fact, you're going to have to break the wires. And it's really difficult to break wires. In fact, what we do, we don't break a hardwired thing in our brain. We can't. What we can do is hardwire a new belief. So this gets really complicated, but you can start to notice what you learn in your book of life by taking this self-esteem test. It's really simple. Yeah, it gives you a score. It's instant. It's completely confidential. I used to put my automate an email response to it, so you'd have to put your email. When I look at the stat, 70% of people bulk to that point and didn't go through. So I was like, as soon as I saw that, I took the email bit out. So I don't see this at all. It's completely confidential. There's no sticky toffee puddings, sticky cookies. There's no cookies on it. I don't follow. I don't see. It's completely automated. You get a score instantly. If it's 18, you probably don't need me. 18 or above, you probably don't need me. You've probably got healthy self-esteem. If it's 15 to 18, maybe you've done some work and you're up at a certain level, but you're a little bit vulnerable. Maybe you just need a little bit of work to get more robust and to have that healthy self-esteem. Oh, that's gone. The bit is, it's back, hooray! The other bit is that if you have 15 or lower, then that indicates that, let's continue, or why don't you continue with this conversation, because it indicates a low self-esteem. But it's a very quick test. It's not reliable. It's just a good starter point for a conversation. For people that that work with me, the first step I take them through is then 12 days to decide, which is a 12-day program, instant access. It's only £47 here in the UK. It comes with guarantee. So if you don't like it, you get your money back. If it doesn't give you what you want, you can get your money back. That's, I think when people invest in something, they make a commitment to themselves. When they get something for free, look at that, never look at that. So you pay the money, but you get a guarantee with it. If you don't like it, if it doesn't give you what you want, you also get time with me. So you get my benefit, my experience, or you benefit from my experience. It gives you clarity. All right, it's on its own. It's not going to change your life, but it is going to give you clarity on what the book of life has taught you and what is false, perhaps, in that you believe to be true. Okay, in that learned response. So I would say yes, low self-esteem is a learned response. And if it's not working for you, then you need to go back, look through the book of life that you've had and explore what's not worked for you, explore why it's not worked for you, and then build in some new hardwiring that's going to work better for you. And you can, it takes work, it's not easy, it's a very complex thing, but it's the only option for you, because you can't change other people. What you can change is yourself. Thank you very much for your time. Almost 20 minutes. So please subscribe. If you've got any more, any questions, do just ask. Many thanks for your time. Speak to you soon. Have an awesome rest of the day. Bye-bye.